Logan, start us out with spring practice. The players took spring break off, but they are back at it.
Back at it. They had practice yesterday afternoon, had a good spring break. Everybody made it back safely. And Florida State still keeping the pads on. And Mike seemed pretty pleased with how practice went overall, listening to the interview, but then, mentioned they'd like to see a little bit more tempo and the way that they're running some of their drills. And that's fine. You come back from spring break, guys, a little, I wouldn't say rusty, but recovering in a lot of ways. Kind of expected, but still overall, he was mentioning a few players that stood out to him. And I think one that stood out to all of us, and including James, whenever he was in attendance for it early on in spring camp, it's going to be Vandravius Jacobs, a true freshman wide receiver. He flashed early on to me, and I was like, who in the heck is in number 19? Because number 19, the only number that I remember that from is Roberto Aguayo. And I'm like, well, who's over there playing wide receiver? And sure enough, that's Vandravius Jacobs. He's kind of a guy that has consistently flashed all throughout camp so far. And yes, we're only a little ways in. We're going into a week and a half tomorrow when the guys return out to practice on Thursday afternoon. But to see him go against some really good competition, including Virginia cornerback transfer Fentrell Cypress, one of the top transfers in the country, to see him be able to compete and also make some grabs on top of him is something to like. And then, of course, I know FSU Twitter and everybody will freak out. Well, it was Fentrell Cypress. What's going on there? I like bringing up Greedy Vance in this kind of scenario. Last spring, Greedy Vance was getting beat left and right on routes, and it took him a little while to get into a rhythm going into fall camp. And then you saw what he did during the season, being your leader in interceptions. So not at all worried about Fentrell, but to more importance to see Vandravius Jacobs make this jump kind of early on in camp is something more fun to watch, because there's no games coming up. You only have a Seminole showcase, which is not even a game. If any of you have been at Doak, and Mike does not run a garnet and gold game, it is a showcase. It's named that for a reason. But for Vandravius to kind of get acclimated and get down the playbook, along with Hakeem Williams also having a good day yesterday on Tuesday, it shows, guys getting into it and getting the playbook down and little things here and there. James can have better comment on that as being a former player, but I'm very high on Vandravius Jacobs. I think of his situation being where Malik McLean was his freshman spring, where he started making moves, and I can't wait to hear about the scrimmage coming up on Saturday, which we'll talk about later. But I want to see if he kind of takes that McLean role like he did his freshman year, and we're going to see a lot of production, or at least a lot of playing time out of Vandravius Jacobs in this 2023 season.